Welcome to our deep dive. You ready for this? The Ottoman Empire.
Ooh, I
We're
am.
going to be looking at the Wikipedia article today and pulling out, I think, the most interesting and significant information about the Ottomans for you.
Sounds good to me.
Get ready for, I don't know about a whirlwind, but certainly a trip through the centuries.
Yeah.
From their, humble beginnings to this astonishing rise as a major world power.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that just strikes me right off the bat is how this empire lasted for over 600 years
Wow.
and started as just this tiny little principality in Anatolia
Yeah.
around 1299. So can you imagine that transformation?
It's like something out of a movie. A small group of people,
I-
led by this guy Osman the First, creates this empire that stretched across 3 continents.
Yeah.
But they weren't just like geographically impressive. They were also pioneers in warfare,
Mhm.
using muskets and cannons way before a lot of their rivals.
Yeah, they were really ahead of their time in terms of military technology, and I think that was a big part of their success early on.
Yeah. How did they manage to pull that off?
Well, I think early on they were very strategic in their expansion, and they took advantage of a weakening Byzantine Empire.
Yeah.
One of their key victories was the capture of Bursa in 1326,
Oh, okay.
and that was a major Byzantine city, and not only gave them more land, but it gave them a foothold right in the heart of Byzantine territory.
Yeah, it's like playing that game of Risk,
Exactly.
just taking over all the little pieces.
Strategic.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like the Battle of Kosovo in 1389 was another one of those pivotal moments.
Absolutely.
So what happened there?
So in that battle, they fought against the Serbs, and their victory there had huge implications because it really weakened Serbia's power in the region.
Wow.
And it really opened the door for further Ottoman expansion into Europe.
I bet that caused some ripples of concern among European leaders at the time.
I would think so.
For sure. But even the Ottomans had their setbacks,
They did.
I'm reading about this invasion by someone named Timur in 1402. Who was this guy and how did he manage to shake things up?
So Timur was sometimes called Tamerlane. He was this really formidable conqueror from Central Asia. And in 1402, he actually dealt the Ottomans a really crushing defeat at
Wow.
the Battle of Ankara. And he even captured the Sultan Bayezid I.
No way.
Yeah, this really threw the empire into turmoil for a while, and it's kind of a testament to their resilience that they didn't completely collapse.
It's interesting how they, even in the face of, total defeat, they managed to find a way to regroup and come back together.
Yeah, they were able to kind of pull themselves back from the brink.
But I'm curious how they went from recovering from this setback to conquering Constantinople, which seemed like this impenetrable fortress.
Right. Well, that's where Mehmed II, who was also known as Mehmed the Conqueror, comes in.
Okay.
He was this really ambitious and determined sultan,
Yeah.
and he set his sights on Constantinople, which was, of course, the crown jewel of the Byzantine Empire.
It makes you wonder what it must have been like to live in Constantinople at that time, with this powerful force kind of closing in on you.
Right.
But what strategies did Mehmed II actually use? Because Constantinople had, withstood countless sieges before.
That's true. He really was a military innovator, and he understood the power of technology.
Mm-hmm.
So he commissioned the construction of these gigantic cannons.
Wow.
Some of the largest the world had ever seen at that point. And these cannons were able to blast through Constantinople's legendary walls, which had seemed invincible for centuries.
So talk about a game changer. I mean, was it just about brute force, though?
It wasn't just about brute force.
Yeah.
He was also really smart about tactics.
Okay.
So one of the things he did was he bypassed the city's defenses by literally having his ships dragged overland
Well, this
to
is...
bypass the chain across the Golden Horn. So it totally surprised the defenders,
Mhm.
and it gave them a crucial advantage.
That is seriously impressive.
Yeah,
So 1453, Constantinople falls, the Byzantine Empire crumbles.
that's right.
What does this victory signify for the Ottomans?
Well, I think it wasn't just about taking a city. It was really a monumental shift in power.
Wow.
It sent shockwaves throughout Europe and the Islamic world.
Yeah.
It really established the Ottomans as a major force on the world stage. And, of course, they made Constantinople their new capital, and they renamed it Istanbul, which is,
Yeah.
a city that has so much history even before the Ottomans arrived.
Yeah.
It's also worth noting that they didn't just come in and erase the previous culture. They actually allowed the Eastern Orthodox Church to retain a certain degree of autonomy,
Hmm.
which was I think a surprisingly pragmatic move.
It's like they were acknowledging that, okay, we have this really diverse population. We need to rule and, adapt our approach accordingly.
Exactly.
So they secured this pivotal victory. They established a new capital. They're demonstrating a level of religious tolerance that was pretty rare for the time.
Right.
What happens next?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
So buckle up because the Ottomans are just getting started.
Right.
Their next chapter involves conquests, expansion, and cultural blending on a grand scale.
Okay, you've piqued my curiosity.
Good.
We're going to have to take a quick break here, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a minute to continue unraveling this story of the Ottoman Empire.
Okay, so we're back, and I'm ready to dig into what you called the Golden Age of the Ottoman Empire.
Absolutely.
We left off with them capturing Constantinople and, setting up their new capital there in Istanbul.
Right.
So what happens next in this, epic saga?
Well, what follows is a period of just remarkable expansion and consolidation, roughly from 1453 to 1566.
Okay.
They just had incredible momentum.
Yeah.
A strategic location, straddling Europe and Asia, strong leadership.
Yeah.
All these things kind of propelled them to new heights.
Speaking of leadership, the article mentions these two names, Selim I and Suleiman the Magnificent.
Yes.
What roles did they play in shaping the empire's destiny?
They were pivotal figures, each with their own unique approach to expanding Ottoman power.
Okay.
Selim I, who ruled from 1512 to 1520.
Focused his attention eastward and southward. One of his most significant victories was against the Safavid Empire of Persia.
Persia. Wow, so we're adding a whole other major civilization
I know.
into the mix now.
Exactly.
What were the implications of that victory?
Well, it was a major turning point. Not only did it allow him to push deeper into Persia,
Yeah.
but it also paved the way for him to conquer Egypt, which at the time was ruled by the Mamluk Sultanate. By 1517, Egypt was part of the Ottoman Empire,
Wow.
giving them control over this incredibly strategically vital region.
I mean, their reach is expanding across continents. At this point, did they ever make a serious attempt to conquer Europe, like all of Europe?
They certainly made significant inroads into Central Europe under the leadership of Suleiman the Magnificent,
Okay.
who ruled from 1520 to 1566.
Got it.
He's often considered the most powerful Ottoman sultan,
Wow.
known for his military prowess, his legal reforms, and his patronage of the arts.
The Magnificent, that title certainly suggests, a ruler of great stature.
Yeah, he's a larger-than-life figure.
So what were some of his most notable achievements?
Well, under Suleiman's rule, the Ottomans conquered Belgrade in 1521.
Okay.
And then they achieved a decisive victory against the Hungarians at the Battle of Mohacs in 1526,
Wow.
which essentially brought Hungary under their control.
This is really pushing into the heart of Europe. I mean, were there any instances where they faced significant setbacks or defeats during this time?
Even Suleiman encountered limits to his ambitions.
Okay.
He set his sights on Vienna, the capital of the Habsburg Empire,
Okay.
which was, a major power in Europe.
Right.
He laid siege to the city in 1529,
Uh-huh.
but the defenders held firm and Suleiman was forced to withdraw.
Okay, so even the Ottomans at the height of their power couldn't conquer everything they set their sights on.
Not quite.
What does that tell us about the dynamics of power in Europe at the time?
I think it shows that even the most powerful empires face challenges,
Yeah.
and that the political landscape of Europe was very complex and constantly shifting.
Mm.
There were always competing interests, alliances, and rivalries at play.
Makes sense. It reminds us to avoid those really simplistic narratives about unstoppable empires.
Exactly.
That's not really how it works.
Yeah, it's much more nuanced than that.
But back to the Ottomans, what was their empire actually like at its peak?
By the time Suleiman died in 1566, the Ottoman Empire covered a vast territory, about 877,888 square miles.
That is a huge number.
It was a truly massive empire.
It's hard to even grasp the scale of their power at that time.
Right. It exerted influence across 3 continents and dominated major trade routes.
Okay, so after reaching these incredible heights, what happened next? Did they just continue expanding indefinitely?
Well, this is where the traditional narrative of Ottoman decline often begins.
Okay.
But it's a bit more complicated than that.
Okay.
From around 1566 to 1827, the empire faced new challenges.
Okay.
But they also showed a remarkable resilience and ability to adapt.
So it's not a simple story of decline and fall?
It's not a straight line. There are lots of twists and turns.
What were some of the challenges they faced during this time?
Well, think about what was happening in Europe at the time.
Okay.
The age of exploration was in full swing. European powers were discovering new maritime trade routes,
Right.
bypassing the traditional land routes that the Ottomans controlled.
So they were facing competition now from these newly empowered European nations.
Exactly.
How did the Ottomans respond to that shift in the global balance of power?
I think they showed remarkable adaptability while their control over some trade routes diminished.
Yeah.
They continued to flourish in other areas.
Okay.
For example, Cairo, under Ottoman rule, actually benefited from the booming coffee trade.
Coffee, that's a connection I wasn't expecting. Tell me more about how coffee played a role in the Ottoman economy.
Well, coffee was becoming increasingly popular in Europe
Yeah.
during the 16th and 17th centuries.
Okay.
And Yemen, which was under Ottoman control, was a major producer.
Okay.
The Ottomans also controlled the Red Sea, which gave them a prime position in this lucrative trade.
Yeah.
Cairo became a central hub for coffee, which contributed to its continued prosperity.
That's fascinating. It really challenges that assumption that the Ottomans were just in decline during this period.
Yeah, I think it's a good reminder to look beyond the simple narratives.
Yeah, it seems like they were finding ways to maintain their economic power, but what about their military strength?
Right.
Were they facing challenges on that front as well?
They certainly weren't immune to conflict.
Okay.
They had ongoing tensions with the Habsburgs in Europe and a growing rivalry with Russia in the East.
Okay.
There were a number of significant battles and campaigns during this era.
Were there any particularly noteworthy confrontations that stand out?
One clash that really had lasting repercussions was the Battle of Lepanto in 1571.
Okay.
This was a naval battle that pitted the Ottomans against a combined fleet of Catholic powers off the coast of Greece.
Who emerged victorious from this clash of naval titans?
The Catholic forces actually won this one.
Wow.
They inflicted significant losses on the Ottoman fleet, which was a major setback. But what's remarkable is that the Ottomans didn't crumble.
Okay.
They rebounded surprisingly quickly, rebuilt their navy, and continued to expand their influence in North Africa.
So they had this incredible ability to bounce back from adversity.
They did?
It really goes against that typical narrative of decline that we often associate with empires.
Exactly. This period really highlights the complexities of the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
They were a dynamic force, constantly evolving and responding to the challenges of a changing world.
Okay, so they're facing pressures both from within and outside the empire.
Right.
What was happening internally during this time?
Internally, they faced a range of challenges, including rebellions, economic fluctuations, the complexities of governing such a vast and diverse population.
Yeah.
One interesting development during this period was the rise of what's known as the Sultanate of Women.
Sultan of Women. That sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
Yeah, so there was this period in the early 17th century where the mothers of young sultans exerted considerable power and influence from behind the scenes.
Wow.
One prominent example is Kozum Sultan.
Okay.
She was a woman who rose from the harem to become one of the most powerful figures in Ottoman history.
It makes you wonder, what kind of impact did these powerful women have on the direction of the empire?
Right. It definitely adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of Ottoman history.
Yeah, it challenges those assumptions we might have about the role of women in Ottoman society.
Exactly.
So they're dealing with all this internal, palace intrigue, but they're also facing this growing awareness that they need to modernize.
Right.
In what sense?
Well, European powers were making significant advances in science, technology, and military tactics during this period.
Yeah.
And the Ottomans realized they couldn't afford to fall behind.
Right.
They began implementing reforms, particularly in the military, trying to catch up with these advancements.
So it's almost like they're feeling that pressure to keep pace with a rapidly changing world. What were some of the specific steps they took towards modernization?
They established new institutions of higher education, like the Istanbul Technical University,
Okay.
focusing on scientific and technical subjects.
Okay.
They also attempted to introduce Western-style artillery methods, and they began incorporating new technologies like firearms into their armies.
Okay, those seem like pretty significant steps towards embracing change. Were these efforts met with resistance?
There was definitely pushback, especially from some religious leaders who saw these Western innovations as a threat to traditional Ottoman values and beliefs.
So it's that classic struggle between tradition and progress that we see playing out.
Yeah, it's a recurring theme.
All throughout history, yeah. Were the Ottomans ultimately successful in their attempts to modernize?
That's a question we'll explore further in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
The Ottomans faced this complex set of challenges, both internal and external,
Right.
and their efforts to modernize were met with mixed results.
Sure.
It's a fascinating and often overlooked chapter in their history.
All right. I am hooked. I can't wait to hear what happens next. The Ottomans are at a crossroads, facing pressure to adapt to a rapidly changing world. Do they succeed? Do they falter? We'll find out in part 3 of our Ottoman Empire deep dive. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our Ottoman Empire deep dive, and last we left off, the empire is facing this critical question, can they modernize fast enough
Right?
to keep up with a rapidly changing world?
Yeah, the 19th century really put that question to the test. This period, from around 1828 to 1908, saw the empire just struggling to hold on to its vast territories while also trying to implement these radical reforms.
So they're feeling the pressure from all sides. What are some of the signs that, things are starting to crumble?
Well, I think one of the most obvious is that the empire itself is literally shrinking.
Yeah.
Nationalist movements are gaining momentum in the Balkans,
Oh, yeah.
and that's a direct challenge to Ottoman rule.
The rise of nationalism, that force reshaped the entire map of Europe.
It did.
In the 19th century,
That's right.
did the Ottomans see this coming?
It's hard to see for sure, but the Ottoman leadership certainly had their hands full,
Yeah.
trying to contain these nationalist uprisings.
Okay.
The Serbian Revolution, which lasted from 1804 to 1815,
Okay.
is a prime example. It ended with Serbia gaining autonomy,
Wow.
which set a precedent for other Balkan regions that were yearning for independence.
So the Ottomans are losing their grip on the Balkans. Were there other major losses
Yeah.
during this period?
Yeah, the Greek War of Independence
Mm-hmm.
from 1821 to 1829 was another significant blow. The Greeks, fueled by their own sense of national identity and aspirations for self-rule, they fought fiercely for their independence, and ultimately they succeeded.
So it seems like the empire is unraveling at the edges.
Yeah, it's definitely a period of fragmentation.
So what's the response from the Ottoman leadership? Are they just passively accepting this loss of power?
Not at all. This is where we see those reform efforts we talked about
Oh.
really kicking into high gear. The Tanzimat reforms implemented from 1839 to 1876 were a series of really sweeping changes aimed at modernizing Ottoman institutions from top to bottom.
Tanzimat, that sounds pretty ambitious. What were some of the key aspects of these reforms?
They were wide-ranging. They touched on almost every aspect of Ottoman society. They introduced a modern conscripted army. They reformed the banking system, and they even began replacing religious law with secular law.
Wow, secular law in an empire that had traditionally been governed by Islamic principles. That's a pretty radical shift.
Yeah, it was a major departure from tradition.
What was the driving force behind these pretty radical changes?
It seems like a combination of factors. There was a growing awareness among Ottoman leaders that they needed to adapt to a world that was increasingly shaped by European ideas and technologies. They also needed to address the internal challenges posed by nationalist movements and economic stagnation.
Okay.
The Tanzimat reforms were an attempt to modernize the empire and create a more centralized and efficient system of governance.
So they're modernizing the army, they're reforming laws, they're introducing new technologies. It sounds like a period of genuine progress, even amidst all the turmoil.
It was in many ways a period of both hope and upheaval.
Yeah.
The reforms weren't always successful or implemented smoothly,
Right.
and they faced resistance from traditionalists who saw them as a threat to established ways of life.
Of course. Yeah.
But it's clear that the Ottoman leadership was making a serious effort to transform the empire and secure its future.
It's that age-old tension between, holding on to tradition and embracing change.
Absolutely.
Were these reforms enough to save the empire?
Unfortunately, they weren't a magic solution, despite these modernization efforts. The Ottoman Empire continued to be caught in the crosshairs of European power politics.
Right.
They became increasingly reliant on foreign loans, which put them in a really precarious financial position.
It's like they're trying to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, but they're weighed down by these external forces.
Right, it's this complex interplay of internal and external factors that ultimately determine their fate.
So what's happening within the empire during all of this?
Internally, they were dealing with an influx of refugees
Oh.
from their lost territories, which put a strain on resources,
Yeah.
contributed to social unrest.
Mm-hmm.
They were also trying to balance this really complex mix of ethnic and religious groups within the empire,
Right.
all while facing growing calls for autonomy and independence.
It's a lot to handle for any empire.
It was an incredibly challenging period.
What's the mood like?
I think there's a growing sense of frustration, a feeling that the reforms aren't happening fast enough, or that they're not addressing the root causes of the empire's problems.
Yeah.
And this discontent leads to the rise of a new generation of reformers known as the Young Turks.
The Young Turks, I've heard that name. Weren't they like a revolutionary group?
Yeah, they were a diverse group of intellectuals, military officers, and activists who were dissatisfied with the pace of reform and the increasingly autocratic rule of Sultan Abdulhamid II. They wanted to see a more modern, secular, and democratic Ottoman Empire.
So this is like a second wave of reform, even more radical than the Pansy Mat.
In many ways, yes. The Young Turks were inspired by Western ideas of constitutionalism and individual liberties.
Okay.
They believed that the empire needed a fundamental restructuring to survive in the modern world.
So they eventually staged a revolution in 1908,
They did.
ushering in this period known as the Second Constitutional Era,
That's right.
a revolution that sounds dramatic. Did the average person living in the Ottoman Empire at this time feel the impact of all these changes?
I think it definitely would have been a period of great uncertainty and change for everyone.
Yeah.
Imagine living through those times, seeing your world transformed by new ideas, technologies, and political movements.
It's almost impossible to imagine, but back to the Young Turks and their revolution.
Right.
Does this mark a turning point for the better? Does the empire finally get back on track?
It was a moment of great hope and optimism.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the challenges facing the empire were just too immense.
Right.
They were still grappling with internal unrest, external pressure from European powers, and the ongoing loss of territory.
Yeah.
Plus, the Young Turks themselves weren't a unified group.
Okay.
They had different visions for the future, which led to internal divisions and power struggles.
So it's a period of both promise and instability.
Yeah.
What happens next?
Well, World War I breaks out in 1914,
Right.
and the Ottoman Empire, hoping to regain some of its lost standing, joins the Central Powers.
Uh-oh.
This proved to be a fatal mistake.
World War I was such a cataclysmic event. It's hard to imagine any empire already on shaky ground surviving that.
It was devastating.
Yeah.
The Ottomans faced internal revolts, including the Arab Revolt, which further fragmented their already weakened empire.
Right.
They suffered crushing defeats on multiple fronts, and by 1918, they were in ruins.
So this is the end of the line for the once mighty Ottoman Empire.
Yeah, the Treaty of Sèvres in 1920 officially dismantled the empire, carving up its territories among the victors. But even in defeat, a new chapter was beginning in Anatolia, led by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk.
Ataturk, he's the father of modern Turkey.
Exactly. Ataturk led a successful war of independence against the occupying Allied forces,
Wow.
rallying the Turkish people to fight for their self-determination. And this struggle ultimately led to the establishment of the Republic of Turkey in 1922. The Ottoman Sultanate was abolished,
Okay.
and the empire was officially no more.
What a journey. We've gone from, a small principality in Anatolia to a sprawling empire that spanned continents and centuries and then witnessed its transformation into a modern nation state.
It's really a remarkable story.
It's mind-boggling.
It is.
To think about all the twists and turns.
Absolutely.
While the Ottoman Empire is gone, its legacy lives on.
It does.
It's a reminder that even the most powerful empires eventually fade, but their influence can continue to be felt in the culture, the architecture, the politics of the regions they once ruled.
I mean, think about all those stunning mosques and palaces,
Yeah.
the intricate art and music,
Yeah.
the delicious food.
Oh, yeah.
They all have roots in the Ottoman Empire.
And the fact that they managed to rule such a diverse empire for so long, it's amazing.
It is a testament to their adaptability and their ability to create a system that, at least for a time, accommodated different cultures and religions.
Yeah, the millet system, which, allowed different religious communities to kind of manage their own affairs within the empire.
Right. It was a fascinating example of religious pluralism
It really was.
that in many ways was ahead of its time. Of course, it wasn't without its flaws, and we saw how the rise of nationalism ultimately challenged the empire's ability to maintain unity.
Makes you wonder, what if the Ottomans had embraced modernization earlier and more fully? Could they have survived into the 20th century as a major power?
Right. Or was their fate ultimately sealed by the forces of history?
Yeah, those are questions that I think historians are going to continue to debate.
Absolutely.
But one thing's for sure, the Ottoman Empire played a pivotal role in shaping the world we live in today.
It's-
Their story is just a complex tapestry of Ambition, innovation, resilience,
Right.
decline, transformation.
And all there.
It's amazing. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the Ottoman Empire. I know I did.
Me too.
We've just scratched the surface.
Yeah,
But hopefully it sparked your curiosity to learn even more about this fascinating,
definitely.
often misunderstood empire.
Right. There's so much more to explore.
It's amazing what you can learn when you take a deep dive into a topic.
I know.
There's always more to discover,
Yeah.
more connections to make,
Absolutely.
more perspectives to consider.
That's what makes history so fascinating.
It really is. Thanks for joining us on this journey through Ottoman history. If you're eager to continue exploring, I encourage you to check out the full Wikipedia article.
Yes.
There's a wealth of information waiting to be discovered.
For sure.
And be sure to let us know what other topics you'd like us to deep dive into. Until next time.
Tell us what you think about this episode. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.